Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1161st New Social Environment. I'm Magley, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Mark Leckey and Charlotte Kent. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Mark Leckey lives and works in London. Leckey's dynamic practice takes various forms, including video, installation, performance, and sound to address notions of memory and class, desire and identity. His work focuses on the effects of technology on popular culture, often through the rhetoric of British youth and subcultures. Leckey's work has been the subject of solo exhibitions internationally. In 2008, Leckey was awarded the Turner Prize. And our host today, Associate Professor of Visual Culture at Montclair State University, Dr. Charlotte Kent, has a particular interest in historical frameworks for art practices with a research focus on contemporary digital culture and the absurd. She writes for assorted magazines and various academic journals, and we're very lucky to have Charlotte as an editor at large for the Brooklyn Rail. And with that, I will hand it over to Charlotte to get us started.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, Mark. Thanks for participating in this conversation. I am really looking forward to it. So let's jump in. If we could get, yay, here we are. So just very briefly for everyone who's joining us, one doesn't always love installation shots, but this one really just kind of caught me in the sense of the sort of overview of some of the things that are going on in this show, the sense of a map of trying to find ourselves where we are, this looking or this eye, this question of the eye and where we are and who we are, with these sort of obvious sense of icons in the background, which isn't just about a sort of iconography and the medieval, which I'm excited to talk about, but also just a kind of historical sensibility, and this kind of moving in and out of time to be in the present. So if we go to the next one, this opening shot at Gladstone, which is where the show Three Songs from the Liver currently is. You can see it for a few more days this whole week. Highly recommend it. I just love this like stepping out of the frame, and and there's just a whole lot going on there that I think we'll probably wind up talking about. But then if we go to the next slide, it's really, Mark, one of the things in this show is just the way in which the installation, like this is not just these individual works, but feels very much like this installation, it's an experience, really does just so situate us in the medieval. There's obviously the gold leaf, but then there's Spider-Man, right? And so then things are sort of becoming a little bit different. A lot of the icons that I'll call them for now, right, lack figures, which is sort of not how we think of icons, right? There's this lighting that you're doing, and the whole space starts to feel like a church. And so if we go to the next slide, and we'll just sort of sit with these for a moment, I kind of wanted to ask just to start with, before talking about some of the videos and so forth, like this sense of wilderness, this sense of the medieval, like where did that sort of come from? You're situated in London, not
Yeah,
obviously, right?
yeah. I'd it came well. It's sort of stemmed from. So when I first had an iPhone, when I started first using a device, whenever that was, um, I had like in the use of that, I had a real sense that the technology was both propelling me forward, but at the same time back into a kind of more animistic sort of worldview. Everything becoming more kind of alive and in this environment where everything is kind of competing for your attention. Um, so and then out of that, I kind of start getting more. It sort of narrowed down into the medieval. I became more and more interested in the kind of medieval idea of a kind of animistic world, animus mundi, and it's sort of, and then just started noticing or conjuring up these analogies between now and then, and a sense that if I kind of think of the world now through a kind of medieval metaphysics, I can kind of understand it better than if I try to think it through in a kind of frustrated modern way. It just sort of opens things up a bit, I think. I mean,
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I've been um, really interested in the sort of the 14th and 15th century um, for a few years, in part precisely because of this sense that like so much was changing and with technology and knowledge systems and just like all this stuff. And I don't know, people kept talking about the 19th century and yeah, I get it, like industrialization. I'm not saying it's not a big deal, right? But I suddenly landed in this earlier period and it felt like the, massive upheavals of that era kind of communicated something of the confusion and disorientation of now.
Yeah.
Um, I guess, the sort of animism you were just talking about. I mean, it's interesting in the sense of, right, it's especially with icons. This was like part of a big debate that would happen, right? Is this anxiety around in the like with some of the Reformation stuff that, it's like there was a sense that Catholics had animated these icons the way they would kiss them and touch them, which of course, like, we touch our phones all the time, right?
Yeah.
We heart things, right? There's this like very sort of like you said, animistic type of thing going on. But people, were also concerned that that suggested something like that needed to be reduced. The Council of Trent goes on and on about this, right? It will. But icons are also something that are kind of uncomfortable for us now.
Yes.
So I don't know, how do you manage that? Like how do you sort of lean into icons that are a little bit distressing while at the same time kind of finding like what's there for you that's so meaningful, satisfying?
Yeah. I guess um I mean I haven't always, that's a lie to say I've always, but I've developed a profound mistrust of images. I kind of think, in the same argument that was made back then, that all representation is in some way diabolical. These things are sent to deceive us or to trick us, and so I guess that's what began my kind of interest in them, is that sort of that debate about around iconoclasm at that time, back in the was 13th century or whatever. And then all right, I should go back a bit further. I've always found them really beautiful. I'm a pre-Raphaelite. I can't bear it once the Renaissance comes in and it gets all kind of meaty and butch. Then I just really lose interest in it. So I've particularly that period, sort of when it moves, I guess, to Italy, when it moves from the kind of Byzantine to sort of see it, like the show that's on at the moment in New York there, like that period in particular, that Sienese period. I just find those works really beautiful. So I'm attracted there. I have a profound mistrust of images and what they do to, because I'm completely enthralled by them in a way that feels potentially unnatural. Well, not unnatural, that's the wrong way, but sort of, like I say, diabolical. I get too fixated on them. Um, they have too much power over me. Um, and then just sort of looking into them and reading around them, finding out this idea that they're not images at all, icons. They're ontologically different from a painting or a picture. They are a window or a channel to the divine, to the kind of spiritual realm. So channels of grace, that's the phrase I always really like. So you're looking, you're not looking at a depiction or a representation. You're looking through this window into this other realm, this other dimension. And again, that seemed really the way the images feel now as well. So yeah, so the idea that images essentially they're changing, they're shifting away from kind of representation and meaning and into something, and one of the arguments made initially about icons is that they weren't made by human hands at all. They were kind of they sprang divinely, and and obviously that's got some parallels now with images being produced by non-human hands. So it just all that it just I don't know. It's just I'm just it's a hunch. The whole thing's just a hunch. I'm just following some kind of instinct about this stuff. It's not like a theory or an essay. It's just hunches that have taken me down this path.
Which is, I mean, kind of like what these icons were sort of meant to do, right? I mean, I think it was interesting to hear you use the word diabolical because I kept wanting to say enchanted.
Yeah, same thing.
There's a sort of and that was part of what they were good for, right? Was this enchantment, this holding you there, this allowing you actually to not be in a thought space, right? But somehow to be able to shift through into that kind of spiritual realm because you were taken out of, like, in this enchantment, sort of taken out of yourself in a kind of way. And that's I'm reminded of the fact that what you like about that was precisely what was I'm just going to get historical here for a moment. I promise it'll be super short. But like in the Council of Trent, like one of the things I decided to do with the images, right, was to have them that all the sort of religious art should be decorous, educational, and clear, right? These were the sort of three criteria. There shouldn't be this other aspect. That educational thing becomes super semantic, right? And it sort of becomes these like meaningful narrative political, ideological, propagandistic, whatever word you want to throw in there, right? But whereas these other ones kind of, we talk about them that way, but the experience of being with them does something different, to your point.
Yes.
And it's, so I guess, one of the things I then wanted to say is this hunch that you have, how does that, I mean, maybe actually, we'll get to the video work in just a moment, but like, how does that relate for you around the fact that that enchantment is also part of what's distressing around our device image relationship, right? Because that's an enchantment that's quite distressing. I don't know, like it doesn't seem to have quite the positive that one imagined the enchantment of an icon having.
No, but it is a kind of re-enchantment of the world. I feel like the world has been re-enchanted, but not in the way that, I guess the 60s counterculture or earlier kind of cultures kind of hoped that the world would be re-enchanted after the Reformation. I think it's, there's like magic, but it's kind of sorcery around, finance and technology that is almost supernatural in its kind of I get, you know, in its hold on us and in its kind of invisibility.
Mhm. It,
Oh, it's my cat. It's my cat trying to get in. Um,
I might do the same thing at some point. You never know.
okay.
Uh,
What was I going to say? So I get, yeah, I guess that thing. I mean, I always like this, like glamour, like the, you know, the initial original meaning of glamour is a spell, right? It's like
mhm.
it's an enchantment, and that's what I mean about images being both diabolical and enchanting. It's like you know, uh, you know, one of the things that's led me to this as well is looking for images that which I've always been looking for, which I find in some way ecstatic or
Mm.
transcendent in some way. Um, Something that takes me out of myself or takes me somewhere, transports me, maybe transports better. So, you know, I'm always looking for an image that transports me elsewhere or not in an escapist way, but just in a way that just sort of breaks me out of I don't know, the imminent frame or whatever you want to call it, you know, that
Okay.
allows
Um,
me to think differently.
I was gonna say, Magda, if you don't mind just going to the next slide, everything you're talking about is making me really want to get us to talk about the video work, Carry Me into Wilderness. And so I don't know if there's a moment to be able to pull it up so we can just share a little clip. Because that ecstasy and the kind of enchantment. I mean, this what we're about to show that may not seem like it connects, but just bear with me for a second.
Yeah.
Into the wilderness.
I can't bear it. I can't fucking bear it. It's just overwhelmed. What the fuck? Jesus. Oh, God. It's too much. It's too much.
We can pause. Thank you so much. Um, so uh
That over loud goat.
which is fitting. So do you want to just talk a little bit about that work and the reason, oh, so just to explain, like the reason I was when you started talking about like the sort of ecstatic thing, um, you know, that we sort of can romanticize ecstasy and the kind of ecstasy that saints and martyrs had, but actually it's a terrifying experience, right?
Yeah.
Um, it is you're completely taken out of place, right? I mean,
Yes.
Not comfy cozy.
No.
And so, and that video work also it the the overwhelming, right? That sort of echo of the overwhelming also, I don't know, connected to that for me. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, definitely. I mean, I do think, you know, like talking about the world being re-enchanted, it's also kind of like ecstatic in or these kind of devices, these the way we kind of move through the world now is kind of ecstatic, both in both senses, in the kind of like, well, not necessarily maybe less the euphoric way, but the kind of bewildering and disorientating way. You know, this idea that you're took out of the place that you know, or you know, you're taken out of your place and you're somewhere that you don't know where you are, you know. And there's obviously a charge to that and a thrill, but you know, but it is disorientating and bewildering and frightening. There's a line I found after this just recently from Emerson where he says, "I was glad to the brink of fear." I thought that was, I really like, and that's so basically what I was walking. I mean, most of this stuff was made during or at the end of the pandemic. It's very, the pandemic is the kind of condition for this show, and I was walking through local park, and it was the kind of end of the first long lockdown, and I was pushing my then baby, 1 year old or whatever, through the park, and end of lockdown, the sun came out. I was listening to Judy Sill. Jesus was a crossmaker. I don't know if you know that song, beautiful. And it's just everything just, yeah, like I say, became overwhelming. And what you're hearing there is I don't know if saying I had the presence of mind or just the kind of sense of that I could make this into something useful. Anyway, I recorded myself in the kind of throes of ecstasy or kind of this having this encounter, this experience in the park. So that's and then I tried to make something out of that, and it just ended up, the only way I could kind of filter it was through back through these devices, really. So that's why all the video looks like, I mean, I used a lot of stuff, CapCut, this kind of cheap editing software that you get for doing TikTok. So it's got all these kind of TikTok filters and effects in it, and it was like that seemed, and auto tuned. That was the only way I could kind of talk about this thing. It was the only way I could describe it. I couldn't go back to that nature and describe it there. I had to kind of mediate it in order to be able to like talk about it, or not even talk about it, to I guess I wanted to re-experience it. I guess I wanted to find a way to kind of re-experience that moment that I had.
There's the wilderness, there's this cave, right?
Yes.
So I mean, I guess there's a couple questions. Like, one, why? I mean, it sounds like you're in the wilderness. Like, so what made you think that like call it "Carry Me into the Wilderness"?
Well, it all so it all came together because at the time, the same with the bus stop piece, which I guess we'll get into, is that I wasn't making art. It was the pandemic. I wasn't making any art, but I was making music. I have like a radio show on NCS over here in London, and so I was making music, and I didn't want to make like art. I didn't want to make videos, and so I was just gathering lots of sounds and clips and found sound, and it's a band back in the 70s called Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show. Yeah. There's a clip of them on this British TV music show called The Old Grey Whistle Test, and they sing a song called "Carry Me," and there's a bit where he gets all, I don't know, he gets into it, and his voice becomes all kind of strangulated and weird. And so I just sampled that. Line, "Carry Me." And then I had that image of the cave, which was, again it's a Sienese painting, 14th century Sienese painting. And I just like that idea of being carried into the wilderness being like a place, not the real wilderness, but a kind of a figurative place of where you could kind of empty yourself out and I don't know, I guess I guess essentially it's about finding, that's where you find the divine, right? It's like you don't find the divine in the cave, you find it in the wilderness.
I have no idea where one finds the divine, but if you have suggestions, I'll go find myself a wilderness.
Well, it's
Uh,
I guess it's this idea that you empty yourself out in order to be filled up again, right?
so actually on that tip, Magda, I'm trying to do this because I was going to have us go to one of the next images, but I feel like maybe given what we're talking about, we should show a clip from um, To the World, Thank You for Your Body, just because actually, how do we empty ourselves out, right? So
Yeah.
um, it seems really intuitive on one hand, right? People meditate, um, people write, people try and like, you know, dump stuff on a page in various different forms. Um, there is something going on here that is also feels like it's about trying to empty yourself out.
Yeah.
Can we play the clip?
Oh my God, you did it! Oh my God! How?
God.
What the fuck? Oh my Jesus Christ!
I can't do it. Let's try again. It won't give.
Um, and maybe go to that still on the slide. Okay, so um, it's a little bit, yeah, sorry about that. It's a little further along. We'll come back to the individual images, but so Mark, this was another one of the works you did during this period, right? Again, not thinking of it as art, right? Um, this is a sort of long piece, and just to explain, like one of the reasons I wanted a long clip for the audience is because this repetition of the person throwing themselves through the bus stop window is a really important part of the piece that I want to talk about, and actually in terms of music. But before we do that, just you found this clip and you were transfixed, enchanted, diabolically so, by it. So can you just like bring us back to the moment where you saw this and why?
Um, there's quite a lot going on in that clip for me because it's I think, well, the first thing I felt when I watched it is it was very familiar, I guess. It's the sort of thing I did when I was like a yob when I was younger. I was what they call a scally, a little scally. I'd do shit like that. We did, you know, very much like that. And so there was that sort of recognition. And then it's such a beautiful kind of score. It's like a cartoon. It's like da, 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 da. Ah, there, da, da, da. It's just, so the first thing I did with it was turn it into a sound. It was like a sound piece initially. There was during the lockdown, there's a label that I kind of do some stuff with called Boomcat, and they wanted to make some lockdown tapes, cassette tapes, like a mixtape, and I put that on a mixtape originally for them. So it was just a sonic piece, and then someone asked me to make some work for a show, and I thought, well, I've got that sound piece. I could go back and look at the video. So, and then I realized the video was kind of just as good as the sound. And there's something, there's something also, one of the other things I liked about it is just the kind of, I think the shittiness of the resolution and the kind of shittiness of the act, or somehow there's something in that as well. I think if it was filmed in high definition, it wouldn't have the appeal for me that it did. There's something about how kind of murky and fuzzy it is. But yeah, I don't know. It called to me. I was enchanted by it,
It's so like I said, this is this much longer piece, and the soundscape of it is actually a crucial is crucial. There is something about this figure, sort of the stillness of like just seeing this, and then this figure breaking through it, right?
Yeah.
That feels so much like this kind of frustration. Like there's a sense of I don't know. I've had moments like that. I'm not gonna. I have not done that. Unlike yourself, right? Okay, I have not done that, but I've had that feeling.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and probably just because of some of the other sort of intonations in this show, that the repetition of it really actually took me back, and the soundscape, weird, echoey, and sort of this kind of took me back to chants. And took me back to medieval chants and thinking
chants. Okay,
yeah,
right.
and thinking about how what medieval chants did, and this sort of the way and the debates around them as well, right? And the sort of weird the holding that the sound does. There's also this repetition that occurs of the "oh my God," which is a part of the sort of ending, in particular of it, that just felt like I hadn't thought about maybe the way in which we chant in a different way now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And so I was just wondering, especially because of your background, like your interest in music and your involvement in it, were you thinking about medieval chants as well?
Not with this, no, but I like the idea. I mean, I guess it's like
totally went there.
It's like I guess it's like there's something like a mantra, right? It's like a kind of, I guess there's that. And then I was thinking of it more, yeah, like this, I guess maybe like a chant, like a mantra, like a repeated refrain. And then you get this chorus, which is these other people kind of, invisible voices that are kind of commenting on what's happening. So I was thinking of it musically, like a Greek chorus, I guess, in some way, but not. I don't know. I don't know enough about medieval. Whenever I try and go into medieval music, then I sort of come into the cul-de-sac of Gregorian chant, and I can't. They don't really grip me.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was definitely a kind of repeated, just that idea of repetition as a kind of as a means of producing a kind of altered state, yeah. So I mean, my sort of main formation with music was like acid house. So it's doing the same thing as that.
I would say not that different.
It's the same. It's just repeated, and then it just gets amplified and then modulated. You know what I mean? It's just you're doing that thing of just there's the same bass line or whatever continuing, but then it's taking you up and it's taking you down.
Yeah.
And I was just
Right.
trying to, I was just following those kind of rules of house, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely something to sort of pick up that I'm going to keep thinking about there because it really, um, that sort of continuous tone, that drone tone, but then
Yeah.
also having it be interspersed with sort of punctuations, if you will. Also the way in which the it was also like it also got very prescribed, right? There were concerns about the fact that it wasn't sufficiently educational, and um, St. Augustine, in fact, what before Gregorian chants in some way, but like was really concerned about in the sense that like if you were moved by the voluptuousness of the music instead of the words, then that
Yes.
was danger. That was a bad thing, right? And so the church does kind of restrain it to get people to stop um, having these sort of like long, weird, nonsense sonic spaces,
Yeah.
which is like part of what some of us love about electronic music and so forth, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I love
but
that. Yeah.
just to sort of, do we have time? Actually, Meg, would it be okay to just play that last minute clip of this piece, just so that people have a sense of why I'm in this weird headspace with it? Uh, And again, it helps to sort of be ensconced in a dark space and kind of and through the whole experience of the installation.
My Jesus Christ. My God, you did it. Jesus Christ. My God. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. My Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
That's it. Yeah.
So, uh, thank you for the use of your body. Um, just why is that to the old?
Oh, that's a it's a kind of treat that title is an old song by Soft Machine, so 70s prog rock group. So there's some weird.
Hey Magli, I think you're accidentally sharing sound as well. You might
Yeah,
want
I
to
think this
pause
is
for
sound.
YouTube. Yeah.
I think there might be another one of my videos has come
Yeah.
up
Yeah, I think so too.
banging away. Thank you. Um, Hold on, my little kid's coming. Wait there, I'm gonna just shut the door. It's getting a bit loud. Yeah, so I purloined the title from, but I liked the way that he was. I liked the idea that he was. Um, when I started making it, like I really, like I loved making that piece because I had no idea what I was doing. I had this kind of riff this the loop, and I just was just seeing what worked along the way, and I didn't know what I wanted it to do. It was very kind of instinctual, and just very enjoyable making it. And I think halfway through the edit, I was starting to think that he was trying to kind of pass through, or like the bus stop was like a threshold between the old world and what is yet to come. So that's why I ended up with that title. And he kind of loses his body. That's what I was thinking. He becomes disincarnated and kind of enters into he goes from the material realm into the immaterial realm. That's what I was thinking as I was making it. He's sort of passing through.
Yeah.
Or what do they call it? Clipping. No clipping. He was no clipping through reality, So that's what the title. It should be To the Old World. Thank you for the use of my body, but I stole it, so I couldn't change it.
That's very rule abiding of you. It's funny because I totally hear you about this idea of like the physical moving over into the immaterial, and that does connect to what comes next. But also, I couldn't help but think of it as the way in which it's the context of the immaterial that also makes us want to bang into things, right? The sense of like, like you are a totally disembodied little square of shoulders and head right now for me, right? I believe on principle that there's an actual Mark Leckey that walks around and is multidimensional, right? But like actually you're just, and so there's a sense we have of like wanting to feel things. And so I actually had this sort of pathos for this young guy who I totally get is probably just like trying to wreak damage or whatever. But like I had this sense of pathos of this character who's like also just trying to encounter the world, to like have an actual physical engagement.
Definitely.
And I think I was thinking about it in that loop in part because of course it's post this, it's like really, the end of this kind of what we're calling it this medieval moment is the sort of real firm separation between body and mind, that Cartesian duality, right? The where it totally relates to the technology space that we're in. And the sort of, whether we want to call them our tech overlords just to maintain a kind of feudal metaphoric language or whatever, really also is this reinforcement of like what the church also, like the Christians also did, which was that like mind should be prioritized over body, right? Over matter. And so I think I also just kind of went into this like loop around that.
I think that's definitely part of it. It's like, a sort of unnumbing, right? It's kind of he's trying to unnumb himself by running into this obstacle.
Yeah.
But then I started liking the idea that the obstacle actually ran through him, and it's like that's why it gets flipped halfway through. It's like it's the bus stops moving through him, and I don't know. I just thought that kind of opened up something more, and but I like what you're saying. I love that line you said before about moved by the voluptuous, not words, not the in terms of a song or the voluptuousness. And very much there's a book. I mean, I haven't read it. I've got it on my Kindle, but it's called The Saturated Sensorium. It's all about the medieval church. And at one point it talks about, I'm reading notes here. One point it talks about that how after the Reformation it moved from a sphere of presence to a sphere of meaning. And I kind of that it's like this idea of like a saturated sensorium. I kind of that's what I wanted that piece to do as well. And just, the meaning is kind of, I don't know what it means and I don't care. It's more like to have that sense of presence. Like that's why there's the sound is so prominent. It's like I want you to feel like not that you're there with him, but that you're experiencing something as kind of, I don't know, as dynamic as that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do feel like this is I think it's the next slide is one of the maps. That figure sort of, floating at the end of that work in space.
Yes.
And so one of the other things, one of the sort of, I think of them as like one of the types of or bodies of work in here are these maps, right? But I don't know why I read them as maps, right? The sort of the moving through this space is, I guess, is really what it is, how I was thinking about it. And this one, just to get it to sort of situate this, like I felt as if this question of presence and this uncertainty around presence also sort of creates this urge to try to locate ourselves, as if like identifying our place will somehow make us feel like I am here, right? That's what the
Yeah, yeah,
maps.
yeah. Yeah.
And this, map that you made, well, I mean, I want you to chat about because I think it's the park near where you live, but also looks like a video game overview with the icons like telling you about the different things you're going to go into in this interesting way.
Yeah.
But why did you make this piece?
Why did I make the map?
Like
Yeah, well, I guess,
with the floating figure and everything?
yeah. I yeah, is the map to the park where I had this kind of encounter. It's the wilderness. That's the wilderness. And that is at the entrance to the park is that kind of slightly abused map. So I just liked it as an image. But
Mhm.
then I wanted it to be I wanted at the beginning of the show like you would have like a front piece to a kind of fantasy novel where they
Mhm.
described a map of this kind of imagined land. I wanted that kind of feeling about it that
Mag, if you jump to slide 21, people can get a sense of that. I think it's yeah, totally.
yeah, so that's the entrance to the show. So I was hoping people would kind of look at the map before they went in, or more probably look at the map when they come back out. Um, yeah, so I just wanted to, I just, it's also a way of saying this is because it's quite a busy show. So it's kind of also a way of saying there's multiple things in this show, but they all kind of connect, and um, you know, you can kind of use this map as a way to guide you through this show, rather than having, I mean, I think there is a text piece there, but rather than having a kind of a bit of blurb at the beginning about I think there is anyway. I think I wrote it though, so it's all right. It's not I wrote my own.
You did
um
it very poetic.
well, I didn't want that kind of uh Lecky is trying to blur the boundaries between blah blah blah. So I wanted to be as visual or poetic as possible. Yeah, so
Hey,
that's that.
Magley, if you don't mind just moving back to slide 18, just so that we can take a look at a couple of the other these we can look at this one, yeah. So this is from Mercy at Christ City, just to like keep us in this kind of there's this sort of space situation for a moment. Like, so you have this piece as well, and we don't have a clip to show, but I think it was also because like with the map and then this piece, I just really felt as if the map was sort of guiding us into this video game.
Yeah.
That and then I got really like I can't help it, right? Like I'm trying to like hold everything down in my head. And so I'm like, and this, and then this connects to this and that. And obviously like the work isn't just going to be that, neurotic and like trying to lead me through a clear thing. But there's a
Oh,
sense in which like both the show is the wilderness that I'm in. And then also, um, I felt like maybe the wilderness that we've been sort of looking at and thinking about is like and the icons and so forth is also like what's happening inside this kind of castle. Um,
oh, right. Yeah.
because I just felt like so much of the work kept having us go into things, right? Like there's the cave, there's
Yes.
um this like moving into a space or going into, a bus, like slamming through a bus stop, whatever. It's like always
Yeah.
a recurring thing. So maybe just why this, like, I mean, then there's like the city of God and right, like, I mean, and the city of man that, becomes this whole thing in the medieval era too. But I'm gonna just assume we're gonna put that part to the side. Like, where did this castle and this sort of game-like element come into it all?
Um, I should say, I was thinking a lot about Windows um, when I made the show. So at
Which
one
we're
point,
gonna look at.
it was going to be called something about Windows. And this is again back to Siena. It's a painting. It's based on a painting by Sassetta. It's
Mhm.
called City by the Sea, I think it's called. Um, and I, I, I was just fascinated by that kind of perspectival kind of arrangement. And I've got a friend who makes CGI for me, and I kind of like the idea of him trying to make this non-Euclidean space in this very rational grid-like XYZ access that you get in when you're making video games or whatever. You basically have to kind of break the logic of the software in order to make this city. It was like a real challenge for him to make that, because it's wrong. It's all wrong. And that wrongness also to me sort of suggested some it started to feel futuristic. I think it's weird seeing this because you don't see it in the show. It's very occluded by the squints. You can't really, and I've sort of stopped looking at it since I made it. So it's quite to see the full image again. It's like, all right, okay, but it's so you can only literally squint through these holes to be able to see this.
Maggie,
Uh,
if you go to slide 24, the audience can get a sense of how it's being shown in the gallery. Um,
yeah, so you got those sort of central those sort of slots or whatever in the middle. That's how you see this video. Um,
and if you go to the next slide, you get a little glimpse of it.
yeah, you can you see it through these squints, these kind of so it's all very uh occluded and mysterious. I wanted it to be, you know, I wanted it to be, I don't know, I had lots of ideas when I was making it. One of the things I wanted it to be was like a dream. I wanted it to be a sort of dream that I could inhabit. I could go into this city and kind of be in this space, uh, and kind of find out what it would be like to live there, or kind of imagine what it would be like to live there. It's like a device to kind of realize this fantasy, or it's not even a fantasy. It's just a sort of like a speculation, right? It's like
Yeah.
a speculation on the future. It's like, what would it be like to live in this future that we might live in? You know.
If you go to the next slide, Magli, I think we have another sort of close. just a sense like of just when you're looking through for people of what it's like.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's not the best shot they've got.
no, but we can go back to the other one. But just because,
Yeah.
in case people didn't totally grasp what it was, the uh, it's interesting that you said like, about the future. I mean, and this idea of having it be like, this dream space and being present in it. You know, it's always sort of awkward because I have thoughts and I feel like there's this whole experience that happens in seeing a show like this, right? And I was really struck by the way in which it held and this like this notion of enchantment we've talked about, this question of presence, right? And a matrix, both in terms of the technological but also what a matrix was in this early modern period, which was this tool. It was the tool in which you put like you could stamp and press a seal on another surface. And that then represented the sort of the monarch, right? But whoever held the matrix had power.
I didn't.
And so it would, yeah, it's like that tool actually becomes very much this sort of like it is you having that as power because you can make the seal, right? You can stamp the presence of the monarch,
Okay.
like you, and that seal is important because it basically just produces the body of the monarch wherever it is, right? So the monarch can be wherever and would travel around, or the lord, I should say, or whatever. But that seal was his presence in his absence, as it were.
Yeah. Okay.
And the and so it's this sort of virtual construct. Anyway, I'm getting lost in the matrix thing because it is interesting. But the point was is like that I wasn't so. What I was really struck with this show was the way in which it was actually a very present tense show. I feel like there's often this urge, and I think it's one of the reasons I'm interested in the medieval is the way it pushes against this urge to leap into what's next,
Right.
into what's to come. And I think in contemporary art, we often have a tendency to be like, what's next? What's going to happen next? What's the next,
Yeah.
And my sense, I think right now that we would do well not to be so obsessed with what's next, but actually to be very present,
Yes.
to actually explore the wilderness that we are in, right? That wilderness is the park outside where like where you live, but that wilderness is a park. It is an enclosure. It is it is a metaphoric enclosure of like what we all are in. The wilderness is where we are in a sense. We
Yes.
don't, right? And so actually maybe some effort to just take a look around and like the way dreams are, you're so present in a dream, the way it's actually more difficult sometimes to be present in our waking lives.
Yeah.
But there's that could be really meaningful right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you said something before uh, about localities.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, there's another piece in here that I don't know if it's up, but this bridge that I was obsessed with for a while, and the bridge was, the bridge was a place that I hung around when I was a kid, and I mean, I haven't done this deliberately, but there's something I don't know if they use the same word in America, but a lot of these like the bus stop and the park and the bridge, they're all very municipal, like municipal as in like a local council, right? They're all about that particular. I mean, if you say
Shared
municipal,
space, public spaces.
yeah, exactly a public space that kind of that is where you live. You're in, you're kind of that you're determined by, right? That this is on a really everyday basic level. like in terms of, you know, when your bins get taken out or whatever, or you know, whether you get what help you get from that local council or whatever. So yeah, so it's like from there you can enter into the wilderness once, you know, I guess it's that back to that idea of ecstasy. You're being taken out of the place you stand, but you kind of, there's something familiar and shared there that, you know, that you can come back to, you know, and sort of oscillating between those two things. I think I can't go the wilderness on my own. There's even though I should, but I can't, you know. It's like the way I work as well. I work at home. It's very domestic. I work in the kitchen. I don't go to the studio. It's like, and that allows me to kind of go, you know, and dream in that city because I'm present here, you know. I don't know if that's what you were trying to get at, but
There's some overlap. I mean, there's just I think
like
that there's a lot here. There's a lot with this show, right? I mean, there's so many we barely there's so many pieces we haven't really even begun to dig into, and there isn't time for me to do that. But because I think I should let other people ask you some questions, though I will likely be jumping in with more questions to come later. But Mark, thank you so much. I want to hand it back to Maggie, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah.
Thank you both so much. This was such a wonderful conversation. We'd like to remind the audience that if you have a question for Charlotte and Mark, there is a link in the chat where you can submit your question. And with that, I will kick off the Q&A. The first question is from Greg Allen. And Greg Allen says, there's lights, darkness, multiple videos, and sound that unfold in a sequence. How did you approach programming the show's experience as a mix, a playlist, gameplay, a narrative arc or journey, a tour? As I type this, you just said a dream, another possible paradigm.
Nice. Thank you, Greg. I was thinking very deliberately about it as a kind of as a mixtape. No, not a mixtape. All right, I said earlier I do a show on NTS, this radio station in London. Or London, I think they have one in LA as well. But I do like a regular monthly slot on that. And during the pandemic, I like I said earlier, I couldn't make work both physically and psychologically. It just wasn't I wasn't able to think about art. But I could make music. I could do this show, and the show putting together like an hour-long slot every month that just helped me I don't know, it helped me through it essentially. And then I kind of tried to stick with that way of making work because I always, you know, I always feel freer in music. Like the condition of music always allows, I can go anywhere with that. If I start to think about art, I immediately feel restricted and kind of and kind of fettered in some way. Not fettered, that's the wrong word, but kind of, it's like I have to think. I have to really start to think in a way that I'm not really good at. And so music, I just feel more, it's just, I'm just more at ease with it. And so I just thought if I can approach making a show without thinking about art in any way and all its kind of affordances, but all its kind of problems as well, then I would be freer to do what I actually want to do. And I could make something a bit more direct or immediate. That's so yeah. So I kind of set it out as like a radio show. That's why there's a big NTS sticker on the map as you go in. It's a kind of homage to that. But I like the idea that it's also like a dream as well. But then that's what music does. Music puts you in that kind of between state. And that, and that's where I want to be when I'm making anything, is that sort of imaginal space.
Thank you for that question, Greg, and thank you for the answer, Mark. It's a perfect segue into Min's question. I'll let you unmute, Min.
Thank you, Mark and Charlotte. I wanted to hear a little bit more about this in between like fantasy space. First, I'm curious about how you make or how you choose your images and sounds that you work with. And I wanted to hear more about the relationship between the image and sound that you choose and put together, this idea of having to be in that space and have to look through a certain, or having to position yourself and position your body in a certain way to experience something that's somewhat transcendental. Like there's an element of elsewhere in your work. Um,
Yeah,
and I wanted to hear a little bit more about that in relationship to sound and image, how the three kind of play together.
yeah. Okay, great. I like that. I like that thing of trying to of going elsewhere, like I said earlier, about being transported. But I don't, again, this is so when I think of this in terms of art, then I immediately think that I have to explain that it's not escapism. I have to kind of find a justification for why I want to go elsewhere. Whereas in music, I don't. I don't have to explain that. And the music that has taken me elsewhere is also, comes from a place, comes from communities, and it's, and it produces politics, right? It changes the world, right? Music. That's what I believe. And I have complete faith in music. I guess art I'm more full of doubt about, but music I have absolute faith in. And so I want to achieve something that is like that condition that music has. That's my kind of that's what I'm trying to get to. That's the elsewhere, I guess, is to inhabit that space that music, the feelings, the effect it produces in me. I'm trying to get there. And I'm trying to make something, like I talked to Charlotte before about this saturated sensorium. I like this idea of just being, I started making work because I was enthralled by images and I wanted to be, so I was so fixated by them. I'd want to be inside the image. I'd want to climb into the image and be within it, right? Inhabit it in some way. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do with these shows, is like it's like you're inside an image. You're inside the map or whatever. You're not looking at things, you're within it. You're kind of so the whole thing just feels like present. It's like and and alive, rather than in the way the music feels alive. I don't like distance. I want to be in that thing. Yeah. Is that answer?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Min. And the next question is from Michon Capone. Do you see this work in relationship to the videos of Bill Viola, who dealt with
Oh.
of life? Battling transcendence, the wilderness, religious and spiritual epiphanies. He also framed his work in the context of historical European religious paintings and icons. This association was inspired by the video clip of the glass shattering in slow motion.
But yeah, Bill. Well, again, back to this the art discourse gathering around my shoulders as I'm trying to make something. Bill Viola, like when I went to art school, I was told no Bill Viola. He's strictly off limits. And I guess I've never really looked at his work. I guess I've been a little afraid to in some ways, because he was such a kind of he was such a kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say contempt, but like I don't, people. He was kind of pushed out. I feel Bill Viola, or by the art world that I'm in anyway. And so I think I have to go and look at him. I think that's the answer to your question. I have to go and look at Bill Viola and just look him in the face and not be afraid of him, and see if I've arrived somewhere similar to him.
Thank you, Sean and Mark. And the last question is from Chloe.
Thank you so much, Mark and Charlotte, for this conversation. Mark, my question for you is about the personal in the work. Central to the story is this vision of you walking through Ali Pali or Alexandra Palace in London with a pram and having this spiritual awakening in the park on a walk. And I wonder how you think about the personal in the work and how it shapes a project.
So I just mentioned then about art school, being at art school, and this is back in the mid-80s. I went to art school when it was very when critical theory was essentially just introduced to British college art schools, and the personal was sort of it was frowned upon in the same way that Bill Viola was. I guess that was the problem with Bill Viola, right? It's just, and I left art school thinking I could never be an artist. I just didn't. I didn't think I had that critical mind. I couldn't have that sort of theoretical disinterestedness. Yes. And the way I started making work, the first work I made like 10 years later was Fiorucci Made Me Hardcore. And that I made that video about essentially like my own experiences of being in around dance culture, about going to clubs and that. And in that I realized that I could make work about my experiences without any kind of anxiety around whether I was smart enough to make art or not. It kind of, keeping it back to what I was saying before about local, being when it's within my own compass and I can make work from there. It doesn't, I don't fear art, but when I try to go, I'm always pushing to go outside of that, to go beyond it, but I have to start there. I have to start with what I know in some ways, and then and then that can be examined, and it can be, I can try and prod at it and pull it apart, but I have to start from my own experience of the world, my own kind of my own response to things. So it's always personal.
Thank you so much for that answer. And thank you again for this conversation with Charlotte today.
Great. No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. It's very nice.
Thank you, Chloe. And before we close out, we're gonna play a song that Mark wrote. Do you want to introduce the song, Mark, before I play it?
It's is it Enter Through Medieval? Are we going for that one? Enter Through Medieval
Yes.
Wounds? That one. It's I like that you called it a song because it started off as a piece of writing. It was sort of commissioned by Heavy Traffic magazine. And then I wrote it for them. And then I thought I want to make it into like a radio play. And then it ended up as this kind of, it's not quite a video, but it's got some visuals to it. And it's about, again, it's personal. It's like, it's the story of, it's this kind of thing that happened to me that was quite horrific, where I like this very violent act happened when I was a youth. And then I kind of extrapolate from that into some, I don't know, you're only playing 3 minutes. It's about vision. It's about sight, and about how it's about images. Yeah, it's about images. It's about iconoclasm. It's about all the things we just talked about. It's perfect. Bye. This is called Enter Through Medieval Wounds.
Unhinged. Enter through the ripped knee and denim jeans.
One-point perspective inside a 1980s coach bus. Continuous shot moving along the aisle. Highly detailed, geometrically patterned seat fabric. Flecked vinyl floor covering. Hinged skylights with large windows back, front and sides. The scene is captured from a low-angle front perspective. The shot is moody and cinematic, with a slight vignette and a warm, vintage tone. Analog film post-processing and denoise. The shot is captured on 35mm Fuji film stock from the 80s with an anamorphic 24mm lens.
Liverpool in the early 1980s, and I'm 19 years old on a football coach when some rival fans climbed on board and started a fight. One of them, huge eyes, worse face, horror hands, bad anatomy, knocked me down to the floor. With his knees on my shoulders, he hooked his fingers into the corners of my eyes and started gouging, digging his fingers into the flesh like he was pushing down into the dirt in order to feel some deep and primal connection to the earth, groping for something palpable, scrabbling for the real. Then, a dizzying collapse of tissue as he reached into the orbit of my eyeballs to yank out the tendril stalks tethered to my head. My ears caught a squelchy, slurping sound as with a joyous shout he plucked both eyeballs out. Pop, pop, all gummy, gluey, hot and botanical. There came a radiant, dazzling darkness as my eyes rolled down between the seats, all sticky with beer and crusted with crisps, before coming to rest near a white polystyrene takeaway box. Now I would think of St. Lucy holding out her glassy eyes on a gold plate, but looking back, I didn't have that kind of knowledge then.
The unseen. Enter through a channel of grace. Irene reverently approaches the gilded surface, burnished to a mirror sheen and animated by candlelight. Inside the Hagia Sophia, heavy with the scent of frankincense, she rises to place her lips on the image.
Yeah.
This was such a perfect way to end.
I hope it was sorry. I should have said it was a bit gruesome at the beginning, but But
We
yeah.
were talking about medieval, eyes on a platter. I mean, we're right
Yes.
there
Okay.
with you.
Good. All
Okay,
right. Okay. Good.
we're good.
No, but that, I mean, that was some of the, actually, I mean, obviously I didn't lose my eyes, but someone did try to do that to me. So that's what I try and do, is take these things and extract something from them. And that's what that is.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you, Charlotte. We'd also like to thank Aaron, Demetria, and Rachel from Gladstone Gallery for their support in preparing for today's event. We'd like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art for sponsoring our NSC and making these daily conversations possible for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails website and YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 24 years. A donation directly supports our writers, staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Kenneth Tam and Christina Yang on the event of the medallion at Bridget Donahue. And as is Rail tradition, you can now turn on your microphones and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Magli. Thank you.
Thank
you very
Thank you,
much.
Mark and Charlotte.
Thank you.
Can I
Thank you
just
so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank
That was
you.
great.
can I just say
Thank
one
you.
quick thing?
Really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Can the Brooklyn Rail can we have one in London?
Yes. Why not, Mark?
Good.
Let's go see your show first. Congratulations. For those of you who
Yeah.
haven't seen it, I'm coming back.
Open a branch in London.
London
Thank you so
Rail.
much.
London Rail.
London Rail.
Yes.
There we go.
Thank you, Mark and Charlotte.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
See the show, everybody.
Bye bye.